The envelope trembled in Natalie Parker's hands as she stood in the dimly lit hallway of the rundown apartment building she called home. The paper was thick, expensive, nothing like the bills and past due notices that usually filled the rusty mailbox downstairs. Her name was printed in elegant cursive on the front, but there was no return address. With her heart pounding against her ribs, she slid her finger under the seal and pulled out a single sheet of paper. As her eyes scanned the words, the color drained from her face. The document slipped from her fingers, floating to the worn carpet like a fallen leaf. "This can't be real," she whispered to the empty hallway. 28 floors above the bustling streets of Manhattan, Jackson Montgomery leaned back in his Italian leather chair, gazing out at the skyline that had become the backdrop to his success. At 42, he was the youngest CEO in the history of Montgomery Pharmaceuticals, the company his grandfather had started in a small warehouse 60 years ago. The Forbes magazine on his desk featured his face on the cover. Alongside the headline, "America's Most Eligible Bachelor Builds a Billion-Dollar Empire," Jackson ran his hand through his salt and pepper hair and sighed. The empire had come at a cost. 3 failed relationships, countless missed holidays, and a growing emptiness that his penthouse, sports cars, and private jet couldn't fill. His phone buzzed with a message from his assistant. "Board meeting in 20 minutes, sir. And Ms. Crawford from PR needs your signature on the charity gala documents." He texted back a quick acknowledgement before straightening his tie and putting on the mask he wore every day. Confident, unflappable, in control. No one needed to know about the nightmares that plagued him, or the secrets buried beneath his success. Natalie tucked the document into her worn backpack and hurried down the 5 flights of stairs to the street below. The October air bit at her cheeks as she made her way to the diner where she'd worked for the past 2 years. At 25, she had already weathered more storms than most people face in a lifetime. Orphaned at 17, she had put herself through community college while working 2 jobs. Her dream of becoming a pediatric nurse was within reach, just 3 more semesters. If she could keep juggling her shifts, classes, and the mounting medical bills. "You're early." "Nat," called out Hank, the diner's owner, as she pushed through the door. His kind eyes narrowed when he saw her face. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Everything okay?" Natalie forced a smile. "Just tired. Mind if I start now? I could use the extra tips." Hank nodded, tossing her an apron. "Table 7's been asking for you. Your regular." Her regular was Dr. Thomas Wilson, a pediatrician at Hope Children's Hospital, who came in every Tuesday for black coffee and blueberry pancakes. He'd been leaving her generous tips for months, along with notes encouraging her to apply for the nursing program at the hospital once she graduated. "Morning." "Dr. Wilson," she said, pouring his coffee without asking. "Natalie," he smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "I've told you 100 times to call me Tom. And I've told you 100 times that my grandmother would roll over in her grave if I called a doctor by his first name." She tucked a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. "The usual?" He nodded, then held up a brochure. "The hospital's scholarship applications open next week. Promise me you'll apply this time." Natalie hesitated, thinking of the document in her backpack. "I'm not sure I'll still be in New York next week," she said quietly. Tom's brow furrowed. "What do you mean? You're so close to finishing school." Before she could answer, her phone rang. She excused herself and stepped away to answer it. "Miss Parker?" a crisp, professional voice asked. "This is Gloria Winters, assistant to Mr. Jackson Montgomery of Montgomery Pharmaceuticals. Mr. Montgomery would like to schedule a meeting with you at your earliest convenience." Natalie's hand tightened around the phone. "Why would he want to meet with me?" There was a pause. "Mr. Montgomery doesn't share his reasons with me, Miss Parker. He simply instructed me to arrange the meeting. Tell Mr. Montgomery that if he wants to talk to me, he can come to Joe's Diner on 9th Street. I work until 4. She hung up before the assistant could respond, her heart racing. She returned to Tom's table, her mind elsewhere as she took his order and moved mechanically through her shift. 3 hours later, the bell above the door chimed, and Natalie looked up to see a tall figure silhouetted against the afternoon sun. Even without seeing his face clearly, she knew who it was. She'd seen his picture in magazines and newspapers enough times. The entire diner fell silent as Jackson Montgomery made his way to the counter and sat down. Up close, his presence was even more commanding. Steel blue eyes surveyed the diner before landing on Natalie. There was no recognition in his gaze, only careful assessment. "Coffee black," he said, his voice deep and controlled. Natalie poured the coffee with steady hands, despite the storm raging inside her. "Anything else, Mr. Montgomery?" A flicker of surprise crossed his face. "You know who I am. Everyone knows who you are." He studied her for a moment. "Is there somewhere private we can talk, Miss Parker?" "My break's in 15 minutes. There's a park across the street." Jackson nodded, taking a sip of his coffee. "I'll wait." The 15 minutes crawled by as Natalie felt his eyes on her back while she served other customers. When Hank finally nodded toward the door, indicating she could take her break, she untied her apron and walked out without looking back to see if Jackson followed. She knew he would. The park was nearly empty, just a few mothers with strollers and elderly people feeding pigeons. Natalie sat on a bench beneath a maple tree, shedding crimson leaves. Jackson sat beside her, leaving a careful distance between them. "I received your letter," he said without preamble. "I didn't send you a letter." His eyebrows drew together. "Then how did you get my family's private medical records?" Natalie pulled the document from her backpack and handed it to him. "This was in my mailbox this morning. I don't know who sent it." Jackson's face paled as he scanned the page. It was a DNA test result, showing a 99.8% probability that Natalie Parker was related to the Montgomery family, specifically that she shared genetic markers consistent with being the daughter of Jackson's deceased brother. "William, this is impossible," Jackson said, his voice tight. "My brother didn't have any children." "That you knew of," Natalie replied softly. "I never knew my father. My mother died when I was 17, and she never told me who he was. All I had was a photograph and a first name, Will." Jackson's eyes snapped to hers, searching for resemblance. It was there in the shape of her eyes, the curve of her jaw, the same features he saw every morning in his own mirror, the same features his brother had. "Why now?" he asked. "Why would someone send this to you now?" Natalie shook her head. "I don't know. But there's more." She pulled out a second document, this one a bank statement, showing a trust fund in her name containing over $2 million, set up by William Montgomery before his death 15 years ago. "According to this, I can only access it if I'm acknowledged by the Montgomery family. Otherwise, it reverts to the company next month when I turn 26. Jackson's jaw tightened. "Someone's trying to force my hand, or someone's trying to right a wrong," Natalie countered. "I'm not asking for anything from you, Mr. Montgomery. I've taken care of myself my whole life. I just want to know the truth." As a cloud passed over the sun, casting them in shadow, Jackson stood abruptly. "I need to verify this. I'll be in touch." He walked away, leaving Natalie alone on the bench. She watched his retreating figure, this stranger who might be her uncle, and wondered if she'd ever see him again. What she didn't know was that both their lives had just changed irrevocably, and that the secret still buried would soon come to light with consequences neither could imagine. 3 days passed with no word from Jackson Montgomery. Natalie continued her routine, classes in the morning, shifts at the diner, studying late into the night, but her mind constantly returned to the documents and the brief encounter in the park. She had searched online for information about William Montgomery, finding only that he had been the black sheep of the family, dying in a boating accident at 32. There were few photographs, but in each one, Natalie could see echoes of her own features. On Friday afternoon, as she wiped down tables after the lunch rush, the bell above the door chimed. Expecting the usual crowd of office workers seeking late lunches, Natalie glanced up and froze. It wasn't Jackson who had entered, but a striking woman in her 60s, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, her silver hair swept into an elegant chignon. Even without introduction, Natalie recognized Elaine Montgomery, Jackson's mother, and the matriarch of the Montgomery dynasty. Elaine surveyed the diner with barely concealed disdain before her eyes landed on Natalie. For a moment, her composed expression faltered, her hand moving unconsciously to her throat. "You look just like him," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Hank appeared at Natalie's side, his eyes darting between the two women. "Everything okay, Nat?" Natalie nodded, finding her voice. "It's fine, Hank. I'm going to take my break now, if that's okay." This time, they didn't go to the park. Elaine insisted on her chauffeur-driven car, a sleek black sedan with windows tinted against prying eyes. They sat in silence as the driver navigated through Manhattan traffic. "Jackson told me about the DNA test," Elaine finally said, her gaze fixed on the passing cityscape. "I insisted on meeting you myself. Are you here to tell me it's a mistake?" Natalie asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. Elaine turned to face her, her eyes the same steel blue as Jackson's, studying Natalie intently. "No. I'm here because I've known about you for 25 years. The admission hit Natalie like a physical blow. "What? Your mother, Jessica Parker, was 20 when she met Will. He was 30, troubled, spiraling with addiction. My husband and I were trying to keep his problems out of the press. When Jessica told Will she was pregnant, he came to us asking for money to help her." Elaine's voice remained controlled, but her hands betrayed her, twisting the pearl necklace she wore. "Harrison, my husband, refused. He thought it was another of Will's manipulations to get money for drugs. He threatened to cut Will off completely if he didn't end the relationship." Natalie's throat tightened. "So he abandoned my mother? Left her to raise me alone?" "No," Elaine said sharply. "Will set up a trust fund for you in secret, using his inheritance from his grandmother. He tried to stay clean to be worthy of being your father. But 3 months before you were born, he relapsed. The night of the boating accident, he was intoxicated. Jessica was devastated. She refused to take any money from us after that, said she wanted nothing to do with the Montgomery family." The car pulled up outside an elegant limestone building on the Upper East Side, Elaine's penthouse. As they rode the elevator in silence, Natalie struggled to process everything she'd heard. Her mother had never mentioned any of this, had changed the subject whenever Natalie asked about her father. Now she wondered what other secrets had died with her mother. Elaine's penthouse was a museum of luxury, priceless art, antique furniture, views of Central Park that took Natalie's breath away despite her turmoil. On a side table were framed family photographs. Elaine picked up one showing a handsome young man with laughing eyes, his arm slung around a teenage Jackson. "This was Will 2 years before he died," she said, handing the frame to Natalie. Natalie's hands trembled as she took it. The resemblance was undeniable, the same dimple in his left cheek that she saw in her own mirror. "Why now?" Natalie asked, echoing Jackson's question from the park. "Why did someone send me those documents now?" Elaine motioned for her to sit on one of the silk-upholstered sofas. "Because of Harrison. My husband died 3 months ago." "I'm sorry for your loss," Natalie said automatically. "Don't be. Our marriage was a business arrangement that outlived its usefulness decades ago." Elaine's bluntness was startling. Harrison was determined to protect the Montgomery name at all costs. "He buried any trace of Will's indiscretions, including you. I respected Jessica's wishes to keep you separate from our family, but I kept tabs on you over the years. When Harrison died, I started making arrangements to contact you, but someone beat me to it. Jackson thinks someone is trying to damage the company by revealing this secret," Natalie said. Elaine gave a short, humorless laugh. "Jackson sees everything through the lens of business. He doesn't understand that some secrets consume you from within." She fixed Natalie with an intense gaze. "The trust Will set up for you is real. With interest, it's grown considerably. It's your birthright, regardless of whether Jackson acknowledges you publicly." "I don't want Montgomery money," Natalie said firmly. "I just wanted to know where I came from." "Noble sentiment," came a voice from the doorway. Jackson stood there, his expression thunderous. "But someone clearly wants you to have that money, and to cause maximum damage to our company in the process." "I've been expecting you," Elaine said coolly. "Your assistant said you were on your way. Have you made progress with your investigation?" Jackson strode into the room, ignoring Natalie completely as he addressed his mother. "The DNA test is genuine. I had our lab verify it independently. But whoever sent it to her also sent copies to the board of directors and several news outlets, along with allegations that we've been deliberately hiding Will's heir to avoid sharing company profits." "That's ridiculous," Elaine scoffed. "Will's shares transferred to you upon his death, not according to the documents they received. There's apparently a clause in grandfather's will stating that if Will had children, his shares would be held in trust for them until they turned 26. Jackson finally looked at Natalie. "Convenient timing, wouldn't you say? Right before your birthday." Natalie stood, her cheeks burning. "I told you I didn't send anything. I received those documents the same day you did. And we're supposed to believe that a struggling waitress with crushing student debt wouldn't use this opportunity to claim a fortune." Jackson's voice dripped with skepticism. "Jackson!" Elaine's reprimand was sharp. "That's enough." But Natalie was already gathering her things. "I don't need to listen to this. I didn't ask to be part of your family drama, and I certainly don't need your money or your accusations." She turned to Elaine. "Thank you for telling me about my father. That's all I wanted to know." As she headed for the door, Jackson caught her arm. You're not going anywhere until we figure out who's behind this. Natalie wrenched free. I have classes to attend and shifts to work. Unlike you, Mr. Montgomery, I don't have the luxury of dropping everything for family crises. Something flickered in Jackson's eyes, surprise perhaps, or reluctant respect. He released her but followed her to the elevator. I have a proposition for you, he said as the doors opened. Come work at Montgomery Pharmaceuticals, an internship in our research division. It's relevant to your nursing studies, pays better than the diner, and keeps you where I can make sure you're not conspiring with whoever is trying to damage my company. You want to keep your enemies closer, Natalie observed. I want to protect what my grandfather and father built, Jackson corrected, and what my brother should have been part of if he hadn't self-destructed. The elevator doors began to close. Natalie made a split-second decision and held them open. I'll consider your offer on one condition. Jackson raised an eyebrow. I want access to all of Will's personal effects, letters, photographs, anything that might tell me who he really was. A muscle in Jackson's jaw twitched. Those things are private. So is my DNA, but that didn't stop someone from testing it without my knowledge. Natalie met his gaze unflinchingly. Those are my terms. After a long moment, Jackson nodded curtly. Fine. Be at the Montgomery building Monday at 9. Ask for Gloria. She'll handle the paperwork. As the elevator descended, Natalie leaned against the wall, exhaling slowly. She had just agreed to enter the lion's den, driven by a need to understand her past that outweighed her caution. What she didn't know was that in the Montgomery penthouse above, an equally significant conversation was taking place. She has his spirit, Elaine said as Jackson poured himself a drink. And his talent for disruption, Jackson muttered. Elaine regarded her son steadily. Did you ever consider that perhaps this isn't about the company at all? That perhaps someone is trying to right a wrong that's festered for 25 years? Jackson downed his scotch in one swallow. The timing is too perfect. The quarterly board meeting is next week, and suddenly Will's secret daughter appears with claims to his shares. Someone is playing a long game here, Mother. Perhaps, Elaine conceded, or perhaps the past is finally catching up to all of us. The Montgomery Pharmaceuticals headquarters dominated the Manhattan skyline, 80 floors of glass and steel reflecting the morning sun. Natalie stood on the sidewalk, gazing up at the massive structure, her stomach knotted with anxiety. She was dressed in the most professional outfit she owned, a navy pencil skirt and white blouse. She'd worn to scholarship interviews, yet she still felt woefully underprepared for whatever awaited her inside. The lobby was a cathedral to corporate success, all marble floors and soaring ceilings. At the reception desk, Natalie gave her name and watched as the security guard's demeanor instantly shifted, from bored to attentive. Miss Parker? Yes, Ms. Winters is expecting you. He handed her a security badge. Executive elevator, far right. It goes directly to the top floor. The executive floor was hushed, the thick carpet absorbing all sound. Gloria Winters, a poised woman in her 40s with a perfectly styled bob, greeted Natalie with professional courtesy that couldn't quite mask her curiosity. Mr. Montgomery is in a board meeting this morning, Gloria explained, leading Natalie through a maze of elegant corridors. He's arranged for you to meet with Dr. Lawrence in our research division. The internship position is in our pediatric formulations team. Natalie's steps faltered. Pediatric formulations? Gloria nodded, not breaking stride. Mr. Montgomery mentioned your interest in pediatric nursing. He thought this would align with your career goals. The research floor was entirely different from the executive level, brightly lit laboratories filled with scientists in white coats, the air humming with energy and purpose. Dr. Lawrence, a jovial man with wild grey hair and kind eyes, welcomed Natalie warmly. So you're the new intern? Excellent timing. We're just starting a promising project on improving medication delivery systems for children with chronic conditions. He handed her a lab coat. Jackson said you have a background in nursing studies? I'm still in school, Natalie clarified, surprised that Jackson had personally arranged this placement. 3 semesters to go. Perfect. Practical experience is invaluable. You'll work directly with me and my team. We collaborate closely with Hope Children's Hospital on clinical trials. Natalie's heart skipped. Hope Children's. I know someone who works there, Dr. Thomas Wilson. Dr. Lawrence beamed. Tom, one of our best collaborators. He's leading the trial for our new asthma medication. He checked his watch. In fact, we have a meeting with the Hope team this afternoon. You can join us. The morning passed in a whirlwind of introductions and orientation. By lunchtime, Natalie's head was spinning with information, but she felt a surprising sense of belonging. The work was fascinating, far more engaging than her textbooks had suggested. At 2 o'clock, Natalie followed Dr. Lawrence to a spacious conference room. Her heart lifted when she spotted Tom among the hospital representatives. He did a double-take when he saw her, his confusion evident. "Natalie, what are you doing here?" Before she could explain, Jackson Montgomery strode into the room, commanding immediate attention. His eyes narrowed slightly when he saw Natalie talking with Tom, but he said nothing, merely nodding in her direction before taking his place at the head of the table. The meeting was detailed and technical, focused on a new treatment protocol that combined Montgomery's medication with a revolutionary delivery system developed at Hope Children's. Natalie listened intently, impressed by Jackson's grasp of the scientific details and his obvious passion for the project. "This partnership will change pediatric asthma treatment forever," Jackson concluded. "With Montgomery's resources and Hope's innovation, we can bring this to market within 18 months. As the meeting dispersed, Tom made his way to Natalie. "You disappeared from the diner. Hank said you'd quit with no notice. What's going on?" "It's complicated," Natalie hesitated, aware of Jackson watching them. "This internship opportunity came up suddenly." Tom's expression was skeptical. "In 3 years of knowing you, you've never mentioned applying to Montgomery Pharmaceuticals." "Miss Parker," Jackson interrupted, approaching them. "Dr. Wilson, I wasn't aware you two were acquainted." "Natalie's been serving me breakfast for years," Tom said, his tone friendly but his eyes watchful. "She's one of the brightest students I've ever mentored." "Is that so?" Jackson's gaze shifted between them. "Then I'm fortunate to have her on our team. If you'll excuse us, Dr. Wilson, Miss Parker and I have some paperwork to complete." Tom squeezed Natalie's arm. "Call me later," he said quietly before departing. Jackson led Natalie to his office, a corner suite with breathtaking views and walls lined with awards and photographs. One caught Natalie's eye immediately, a younger Jackson with his arm around Will, both in tuxedos, grinning at the camera. "Your first day went well?" Jackson asked, settling behind his imposing desk. "Yes, thank you. Dr. Lawrence is brilliant," Natalie replied, still looking at the photograph. Jackson followed her gaze. That was taken at a charity gala, 6 months before Will died. One of his rare sober periods, he opened a drawer and extracted a small key. As promised, access to Will's personal effects. "They're in storage on the lower level. Gloria will take you down when we're finished." Natalie tore her eyes from the photograph. "Thank you. Now the internship. Standard hours are 9 to 5, Monday through Thursday. Fridays are half-days for research staff. The salary is competitive, significantly more than you made at the diner. There's also a housing stipend." "Housing stipend?" Jackson's expression was unreadable. "Your apartment in Harlem is a 45-minute commute. There's a company apartment 3 blocks from here that's currently vacant. It's yours if you want it." Natalie stiffened. "How do you know where I live?" "I make it my business to know everything about potential threats to my company." "I'm not a threat to your company," Natalie said firmly. "I'm just trying to understand my past." Jackson leaned back, studying her. "Your past and my company's future may be more intertwined than you realize. The board meeting this morning was contentious. 2 members have already suggested we should embrace the Montgomery heir publicly to avoid negative press. I've never claimed to be—" "It doesn't matter what you've claimed," Jackson cut her off. "Perception is reality in business. And right now the perception is that Montgomery Pharmaceuticals has been hiding Will's daughter to protect profits." Natalie's frustration mounted. "I've told you repeatedly I had nothing to do with those documents being sent." "I know." Jackson's admission surprised her. "Our security team traced the package sent to you." "It came from inside this building." Natalie sat up straighter. "What? Who sent it?" "We don't know yet. It was dropped in the internal mail system, addressed to you. No fingerprints, no surveillance footage. Whoever did this knows our security protocols intimately." Jackson's jaw tightened, which narrows the list considerably. "So someone inside Montgomery Pharmaceuticals wanted me to know about my father," Natalie said slowly. "Why?" "That's what I intend to find out." Jackson stood. "In the meantime, keep your head down. Do your work. Hand report anything unusual directly to me." Gloria escorted Natalie to a climate-controlled storage room in the basement level. Rows of shelves held labeled boxes, mostly containing corporate archives. In a corner section, several boxes bore the simple label WM Personal. "Mr. Montgomery said to give you privacy," Gloria said, swiping her keycard to unlock the room. "I'll be outside when you're finished." Alone among the remnants of her father's life, Natalie felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread. She opened the first box carefully, finding neatly organized folders containing William's personal papers, bank statements, property deeds, insurance policies. The second box held photographs, dozens of them chronicling William's life from childhood to his final years. Natalie sat cross-legged on the floor, examining each image. William at graduation, on sailing trips, at family events. Always the life of the party, always with that same dimpled smile she recognized from her own reflection. In many early photos, he and Jackson were inseparable, their brotherly bond evident. But as the timeline progressed, William appeared increasingly haggard, his smile strained while Jackson grew more polished and serious. The third box contained personal correspondence and journals. Natalie hesitated before opening the leather-bound books, feeling like an intruder in her father's private thoughts. The first journal entry was dated 15 years ago, just months before his death. Jay doesn't understand. Nobody does. This company was never supposed to be what it's become. Grandfather's vision has been corrupted. The Brightwell acquisition is the final straw. "I can't be complicit anymore," Natalie frowned, turning pages. More entries expressed William's growing disillusionment with the company's direction under his father's leadership. Then she found entries mentioning her mother. "Jessica is the only pure thing in my life. She sees me, not the Montgomery name or fortune. And now the baby. I want to be worthy of them both. I've been clean for 6 weeks. One day at a time." Tears blurred Natalie's vision as she read her father's hopes for the child he would never meet. Then a name in a later entry caught her attention: Brightwell Pharmaceuticals. William had been vehemently opposed to Montgomery's acquisition of the smaller company, citing ethical concerns about their research practices. In the final journal, dated just weeks before his death, William had become increasingly paranoid. "I've gathered all the documentation. If anything happens to me, T has copies of everything. Dad can't silence both of us." The last entry sent chills down Natalie's spine. "Meeting Dad on the boat tomorrow. Last chance to make him see reason before I go public. Jay refuses to get involved, says I'm being dramatic. But he hasn't seen what I've seen." Natalie closed the journal, her mind racing. What had William discovered that had troubled him so deeply? And who was T? As she returned the journals to their box, a sealed envelope fell from between the pages of the last book. It was addressed simply, "For my child." With trembling fingers, Natalie broke the seal. Inside was a letter, dated 1 week before William's death, and a small USB drive. "To my son or daughter," the letter began. "If you're reading this, then I never had the chance to know you. I'm sorry for that. It will be my greatest regret. But there are things you should know about our family and the company that bears our name. The truth is, on the enclosed drive, trust no one in the family except perhaps Jackson, though his loyalty to the company may outweigh his conscience. If you're anything like me, you'll want to right this wrong. Be careful. What happened at Brightwell can never be allowed to happen again." Natalie stared at the USB drive, a chill running down her spine. After 15 years, she was holding her father's final message, and possibly the key to understanding his death. Outside the storage room, she could hear Gloria receiving a phone call. Quickly, Natalie slipped the letter and USB drive into her pocket, just as the door opened. "Miss Parker, Mr. Montgomery is asking for you. There's been an urgent development." Natalie followed Gloria through the labyrinthine corridors of Montgomery Pharmaceuticals, the USB drive a heavy weight in her pocket. Her mind whirled with questions. What had her father discovered about the Brightwell acquisition? Who was T? And most disturbingly, had William's death truly been an accident? Jackson was standing at the window of his office, his back to the door when they entered. The tension in his shoulders was visible even from across the room. "Thank you, Gloria," he said without turning. "Please close the door." Once they were alone, Jackson finally faced Natalie. His expression was grim. "There's been a security breach. Someone accessed confidential files related to the Brightwell acquisition from 15 years ago." Natalie's heart raced, but she kept her expression neutral. "What does that have to do with me?" "The access occurred 20 minutes ago, from the terminal in the storage room where you were reviewing Will's belongings." Jackson's eyes were hard, searching. Care to explain? I didn't access any company files, Natalie said truthfully. I was only looking through my father's personal items as you authorized. Jackson approached her slowly. Then someone used your credentials while you were down there. Either way, I need to know what you found. Natalie hesitated, her hand unconsciously moving toward her pocket. Jackson caught the gesture, his eyes narrowing. What are you hiding, Natalie? Before she could answer, Jackson's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, his expression shifting. I need to take this, he answered, his tone immediately professional. Montgomery speaking. As he listened, the color drained from his face. When? He asked sharply. Which hospital? A pause. I'll be right there. He ended the call and grabbed his suit jacket from the back of his chair. That was Hope Children's Hospital. My mother collapsed at her charity foundation office. They're saying it might be a stroke. I'm sorry, Natalie said, genuinely concerned despite her suspicions. Is there anything I can do? Jackson seemed to battle with himself for a moment. Come with me, he finally said. Whatever's going on here, I can't leave you unsupervised in this building, and I don't have time to deal with security protocols right now. The ride to Hope Children's Hospital was tense and silent. Natalie watched Jackson's profile as he stared out the window, his jaw clenched, fingers drumming restlessly on his knee. Despite his controlled exterior, she could see genuine worry in his eyes. At the hospital, they were immediately escorted to a private wing. Dr. Thomas Wilson met them in the corridor, his expression grave. Jackson, he greeted with a nod. We have your mother stabilized. It wasn't a stroke, thankfully, but she did experience a serious cardiac event. She's asking for you. Tom's eyes widened when he spotted Natalie. Natalie, what are you doing here? She's with me, Jackson said curtly. Where's my mother? Tom led them to a private room where Elaine Montgomery lay connected to monitors, looking suddenly frail against the white hospital linens. Her eyes fluttered open as Jackson approached the bed. Jackson, she said weakly. And Natalie. Good. You're both here. Save your strength, Mother, Jackson said, taking her hand. Elaine shook her head. No more secrets. No more waiting. Her eyes found Natalie's. It was me. I sent you the documents, Jackson stiffened. What? After Harrison died, I found Will's private files. He'd been investigating irregularities in the Brightwell clinical trials before his death. Children were harmed, Jackson. The data was falsified. That's impossible, Jackson protested. The FDA approved those trials. Our legal team vetted everything. Because your father buried the evidence, Elaine said firmly. Will threatened to go public. The night before he died, he confronted Harrison on the boat. Natalie felt cold realization wash over her. It wasn't an accident, she whispered. Elaine's eyes filled with tears. Harrison came home that night, soaking wet, saying there had been a terrible accident. I suspected the truth, but I was a coward. I did nothing. She gripped Jackson's hand tighter. Then I found out that one of the children from the original Brightwell trial had been admitted to Hope's long-term care facility. A little boy named Michael Turner. Tom, who had been standing quietly by the door, stepped forward. Michael is my patient. He's been here for 15 years, suffering from neurological damage caused by an experimental asthma medication. The same medication you're rushing to market now, Elaine said to Jackson. They've reformulated it, claiming it's safe. But the original research was flawed. Will knew it. That's why I had to bring Natalie into this. She's the proof that Will existed, that his warnings were real. Jackson looked stricken. Why didn't you just tell me? Would you have believed me over your father? Over the company you've dedicated your life to? Elaine's voice was gentle but firm. You needed to see the evidence for yourself. Natalie reached into her pocket and pulled out the USB drive. I found this among my father's things. He left it for me, along with a letter mentioning Brightwell. Jackson stared at the small device. Give it to me. Not until you promise to do the right thing, Natalie said, holding his gaze. Whatever is on this drive, we take it to the proper authorities. No cover-ups. Tom stepped closer. Jackson, I've been treating Michael Turner for years. His parents have been fighting for justice, but they've been stonewalled at every turn. If there's evidence that could help them, may I see him? Natalie interrupted. Michael? Tom hesitated, then nodded. He's just down the hall. Leaving Jackson with his mother, Tom led Natalie to another private room. Inside, a boy of about 16 lay in a specialized bed, machines monitoring his vital signs. Though his body was that of a teenager, his limbs were thin and atrophied. His eyes, however, were bright and alert, following their movement as they entered. "Michael, this is my friend Natalie," Tom said gently. Natalie approached the bed slowly. Michael couldn't speak, but he could communicate through a specialized tablet attached to his bed. His fingers moved slowly, selecting letters. "New friend?" appeared on the screen. "Yes," Natalie said, her throat tight with emotion. "I'm new here." "Story time?" Michael typed. Tom smiled. Michael loves stories. "I read to him every day during my rounds." Natalie sat in the chair beside the bed. "I'd like to tell you a story, Michael, about my father, and how he tried to help children like you." For the next 15 minutes, Natalie spoke softly to Michael, telling him about William Montgomery and his fight against corporate corruption. Tom stood by, listening intently. When she finished, Michael's fingers moved across his tablet again. "Dad talks about him." Natalie looked up at Tom, confused. Michael's father, Travis Turner, worked in the Montgomery Pharmaceuticals legal department 15 years ago, Tom explained. He was the whistleblower who tried to support Will's claims, but after Will died, Travis was discredited and fired. He's been fighting for justice for his son ever since. T, Natalie whispered, the initial from her father's journal suddenly making sense. "My father mentioned someone named T who had copies of his evidence." The door opened behind them, and Jackson stood there, his face ashen. "Travis Turner," he said. "He's been sending anonymous tips to the board for years. We all thought he was just a disgruntled former employee with a vendetta." "He was trying to finish what my father started," Natalie said, "to protect other children from suffering like Michael." Jackson approached the bed, his confident demeanor gone. He looked at Michael for a long moment, then turned to Natalie. "I've just spoken with the board. We're halting production of the new asthma medication, pending a complete review of all the research, and—" He hesitated. "I've authorized a formal investigation into the circumstances of Will's death." Tom's pager beeped. He checked it and frowned. "Excuse me, I need to take this." He stepped out of the room. Alone with Michael and Natalie, Jackson continued, "I've spent my entire life believing in this company, in my father's vision. To think that he might have—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "It wasn't your fault," Natalie said softly. "You didn't know. I should have listened to Will. He tried to tell me, but I was too focused on proving myself to our father." Jackson ran a hand through his hair. "The board wants to make a public statement acknowledging you as Will's daughter and my niece. They think it will help control the narrative when this all comes out. Is that what you want?" Before Jackson could answer, Tom returned, his expression serious. "Jackson, your mother is asking for you. And Natalie, there's someone here to see you. Travis Turner is in the waiting room." 1 year later, Natalie stood at the podium in the grand ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria, hundreds of faces turned toward her expectantly. Behind her, a banner read First Annual William Montgomery Foundation for Pediatric Research Ethics. "My father believed that pharmaceutical companies had a sacred duty to protect the most vulnerable," she began. "Today, with the establishment of this foundation, we honor his vision and ensure that no child will ever again be harmed by negligence or corporate greed." In the front row, Jackson sat beside Elaine, who had made a full recovery. Next to them was Michael Turner in his wheelchair, his parents beaming with pride. The settlement from Montgomery Pharmaceuticals had provided for the best care available, and Michael had made remarkable progress over the past year. Tom, who had become the foundation's medical director, caught Natalie's eye and gave her an encouraging smile. Their relationship had blossomed from friendship to romance in the months following the revelations, built on shared values and mutual respect. As Natalie continued her speech, she glanced at the family portrait newly added to the Montgomery collection, a photograph of Will holding Jessica, both radiantly happy, taken before Natalie was born. Jackson had found it among his father's personal effects and had it restored and framed as a gift for her. Today marks not just the launch of a foundation, but the healing of a family, Natalie said, her voice strong and clear. The Montgomery legacy is being redefined, not through profit margins or market share, but through integrity, transparency, and compassion. Later, as guests mingled during the reception, Jackson approached Natalie, champagne flutes in hand. "Grandfather would have been proud," he said, handing her a glass. "He started this company to help people, not to build an empire. Somewhere along the way, my father lost sight of that. And now?" Natalie asked. "Now we have a chance to do better." Jackson clinked his glass against hers. "To family, the one we're born with and the one we choose." Across the room, Tom was showing Michael how the Foundation's new adaptive technology program would help children with similar conditions communicate more effectively. Elaine was deep in conversation with Travis Turner, both of them finally at peace with the past. Natalie looked around at this unlikely family that had formed from secrets and tragedy. The trust fund William had established for her had been donated to the Foundation, along with a significant contribution from Montgomery Pharmaceuticals. She had completed her nursing degree and now divided her time between clinical work at Hope Children's Hospital and overseeing the Foundation's educational programs. The journey had been painful, the revelations devastating, but from those broken pieces had emerged something meaningful and lasting. William's legacy would live on, not just through Natalie, but through every child helped by the Foundation that bore his name. As she watched Michael laugh at something Tom said, Natalie felt a profound sense of belonging. She had set out to discover her past, but had found something far more valuable, a future built on truth, purpose, and love.